Part 1. The Separation. On the night the twins were born, thunder cracked across the sky, as if the world itself objected. Queen Aloan screamed once, only once, before silence swallowed the chamber. 2 daughters emerged, identical in every detail. Pale as porcelain, dark-haired, and wide-eyed, with a knowing that made the midwives uneasy. "They are the same," one whispered. The king did not smile. He stared at the infants, as though one were a reflection that should not exist. "This cannot be allowed," he said coldly, before the queen could protest, before she could even hold them both. The king took one child and wrapped her in velvet, trimmed with gold. The other, wrapped hastily in linen, was thrust into the arms of a trembling servant. "Take her away," the king ordered. "Erase her." The queen wept as her daughters were torn apart, one destined for silk and crowns, the other for shadows and silence. But as the door closed, both infants began to cry, and for a moment, their cries were perfectly in sync. Part 2. The Castle Daughter. Princess Orlia grew in luxury, surrounded by mirrors. Every corridor reflected her face. Every servant bowed to it. Every tutor praised it. "You are perfection," they told her. But Orlia hated the mirrors. Sometimes, when she stared too long, her reflection lagged. Not by much, just a fraction. A blink too slow. A smile that didn't quite match. At 16, the dreams began. She dreamt of another life, mud-stained floors, rough hands, a woman who smelled of iron and milk, and pain, always pain. Her stomach would twist violently in her sleep, as though something inside her was pulling at her organs. Doctors were summoned. "She is with child," they said. The king's face darkened. "That is impossible." Orlia had never known a man. Yet her body was changing, swelling, stretching, betraying her. Worse still, sometimes she felt movement, not like a baby, something sharper, something that scratched. Part 3. The Pauper Daughter. In a crumbling cottage at the edge of the kingdom, Alara lived a life of quiet suffering. Her mother never spoke of her father, only warned her, "You were never meant to exist." Alara worked tirelessly, her hands raw, her body thin. But she too had dreams of silk sheets, of chandeliers, of a girl who looked exactly like her screaming. At 17, Alara's body began to change. Her belly swelled unnaturally fast. Villagers whispered, "She's cursed. She's carrying something unholy." Alara knew the truth before anyone else. This was no normal pregnancy. At night, she would feel it, something shifting violently inside her, as though it were trying to escape. Not grow, escape. And sometimes she would hear it, a faint, wet whisper from within. "She has more room." Part 4. The Connection. The pain became unbearable for both girls. Miles apart, they collapsed at the same moment. Doctors in the castle examined Orlia, their faces pale with horror. This is not a child." Meanwhile, in the cottage, Alara clawed at her stomach as something pushed outward, too sharp, too deliberate. That same night, both girls dreamed the same dream. They stood in a long corridor lined with mirrors, facing each other. For the first time, Orlia reached out. Alara mirrored her perfectly. "Who are you?" Orlia whispered. "I think I'm you," Alara replied. Orlia's stomach twisted violently. Alara screamed. Their reflections behind them began to move on their own hundreds of identical girls, all pregnant, all writhing. And then the reflections split open. From their bellies, something long and pale began to emerge. Not babies, copies, malformed, identical copies of the twins, but unfinished. Two halves, the reflections whispered. Two wombs, one whole. Part 5, The King's Secret. The Queen finally confessed. Years ago, the king had sought perfection, an heir without flaw. A royal physician, mad, brilliant, offered a solution. Split the soul, divide imperfection, create two identical vessels, and let nature decide which was superior. But something went wrong. The twins were not halves. They were mirrors, and what grew inside them was not human. They were never meant to live separately, the queen sobbed. They were meant to become one. Part 6, Convergence. As the twins' bodies deteriorated, something inside them grew stronger. Orlia's stomach stretched unnaturally, her skin thinning until something pale pressed visibly from within. Alara's body twisted, her spine bending as though making space for something larger than herself. Drawn by instinct or something darker, Alara began walking toward the castle. She didn't know how she knew the way, only that she had to reach her, because whatever was inside them was trying to be born. Part 7, The Birth. They met in the throne room. Two identical girls, two swollen, trembling bodies. The king watched in horror as they approached each other. "Stop them," he shouted. But no one dared move. Orlia and Alara reached out, hands touching. The moment their skin met, they screamed. Their bodies convulsed as something inside them reacted violently. Their stomachs split not with blood, but with something pale and glistening forcing its way out. Not one creature, two halves, each writhing, reaching, until they found each other and fused. The thing that stood before the throne was almost human. Almost. It had their face, their eyes, their voice. "Perfect," it said softly. The king fell to his knees. This was what he had wanted. Perfection, but perfection had a cost. The creature turned its head unnaturally, bones cracking. "You divided us," it said. "So we divided ourselves." It smiled, and behind it, in the shattered mirrors, hundreds more reflections began to move. Pregnant, waiting. Part 8, The Legacy. The castle was abandoned within days. Servants fled. The king was never seen again. But travelers speak of a girl who wanders the ruins. Sometimes she looks like a princess, sometimes like a pauper, sometimes both at once. And if you listen closely, when she passes, you can hear something moving beneath her skin, scratching, growing, waiting, because the womb was never meant to hold just one.